Nityanandam. May the Most High shine this light upon you, and may that light help you radiate with eternal bliss. I come in the spirit of universal truth, and I greet you all. I want to talk about my meeting with Dr. Sebi. In March of 2014, my wife, my friend, and I, we met Dr. Sebi at his office in Los Angeles, California. This was the beginning of a time in my life where my wife and I decided to incorporate a whole food plant-based diet. We started in December or so of 2013. This is when we became vegan. My wife and I, before that, we were pescatarian. Back in 2006 is when I first became pescatarian, meaning I didn't eat pork, beef, chicken, just consuming sea creatures. And it was helpful at the time. I became more healthy, but I knew I wasn't as healthy as I needed to be. I knew I had more work to do. This was around the same time that I found out about Dr. Sebi, around 2005, 2006. And it was through Lisa Left Eye Lopez's documentary, the MTV documentary, where she went to Usha village to get healing from the disease that she had. And Dr. Sebi made me so proud as an African that there was an African man who cured AIDS, sickle cell, lupus, herpes, all kinds of so-called diseases that were deemed incurable by Western medicine. I was so much pride, as a young boy, 17 years old at the time, and fascinated by how he did it. And when I learned how he did it, I learned about the African biomineral balance. I learned about natural vegetation cell food. I learned about foods that are alkaline in nature versus foods that are acidic in nature. Foods that are hybridized versus foods that are non-hybridized. Foods that Mother Nature produce, which are the non-hybridized foods versus foods that are man-made or engineered or cross-bred, being the hybridized foods. And mine was blown, like, is that simple? He said the only disease is mucus. I said, is that simple? And at the time I was learning so much about European conquest, Western philosophy, Western religion versus the Eastern, or Eastern philosophy, Eastern thinking, African thinking versus African philosophy versus Western philosophy. So I knew that, of course, what I knew at the time is that Western philosophy complicates a lot. Western sciences complicate everything. The Western way of thinking is a very linear way of thinking. The modern Western way of thinking. So I knew at the time, of course, it is that simple, huh? So it was an aha moment for me. But I wasn't ready at the time. I was not disciplined enough to go that far and become fully vegan or fully whole food plant-based eating individual, becoming a person who followed this electric food regimen, the African biomineral balance. But I knew one day that I would. I told myself that one day I will become disciplined enough and I'll incorporate this. And that time happened in 2013. And because it was so new for me, I made sure that I went and learned from the master. Although I wasn't blessed to be a direct student of Dr. Sebi like Pablo and many others, from far away I learned from him. But I told myself that I have to meet this man and tell him my journey, tell him my story, tell him how proud I am and how I want to learn so much from him. And that was March of 2014, as I said. So I would go to the office all the time in LA in 2013. I would always go. And every time I would go, it would be a wonderful, gentle, beautiful Habasha, a young lady at the time. Her name was Jordanis. And I always go and tell her, like, when I get to the office, is Dr. Sebi here? Is Dr. Sebi here? And, every time she would say, no, he's in Honduras. And I would just ask every time, like, maybe one time I'll get lucky or be blessed. And she'll say yes. And that time did come. It came on this day where so much was going on in the office. The office was going through a rough time, an inauspicious time, but ended up still being an auspicious time, where all of its computers, His herbs were stolen. The whole place was ransacked. And I remember just looking like, what happened? What's going on? And your Adonis was just like, she just gave me that look, and I know she wanted to go in and say some more, but she just didn't tell us too much. My wife and I knew something happened. We had an idea. So I asked her, is Dr. Sebi here? And she smiled like, yes, it's your lucky day. He is here. And I was just so happy. Like, I'm going to meet the myth, the man, the legend, Dr. Sebi. And I remember, she just called, Sebi said, some people are here to meet you. And he just came walking down, tall, slender, just walking down. And as soon as his face showed, he was just smiling, bright smile. And we gave him a hug, and, his energy, even though at the time it was a rough time that he was going through, he just had a high vibration. And he told us, sit down, sit down. So we sat, and he sat, and immediately he just starts going on, starts to tell his stories. And I asked him, what's going on? And he said, my wife at the time did this. She took all the stuff, took the herbs, took the computers, and I think at the time his daughter too. And I remember, I didn't know who she was, I didn't know who the daughter was. All I know is I'm standing in front of Dr. Sebi. So I remember just getting angry for him, just like, what? How can this, what? And he said, it's okay. It's okay. She needs healing. She needs healing. I mean, look at the kind of being. Instead of him being mad and angry, getting turned up, he said, no, she just needs healing. And I mean, all of his work at least in LA, all of his work was just stolen. So for this being to just say, it's okay, she needs healing, it just shows you the kind of energy, the kind of being he was. This is somebody who carried a space about him, a forgiving heart, someone who understood that people do things based upon their dis-ease, whether it's emotional dis-ease, mental dis-ease, physical dis-ease, or spiritual dis-ease. It is not them who are carrying out these acts. It is the dis-ease within them. And once they remove and reverse this dis-ease, they wouldn't do such things. This is what he was telling us. Beautiful teaching. And it wasn't even 5 minutes into our conversation that we were having with him. So then he starts talking about his history, about how he used to be part of the Nation of Islam, which I did not know at the time early on. I think it was the 70s he was saying. I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but he said during that time he was in the Nation. He was telling us about his work on a ship, and how he used to work on that ship, and he was called a nigger by a white guy who was his friend, but he was called a nigger, and it didn't faze him. Because it didn't faze him, the guy got even more mad. He just starts telling all these wonderful stories. He told us about the black woman being God, and he said, I'm not a healer. I didn't heal anything. It was the black woman who did it. It was the mother who did it. It was the mother who is the healer. I don't get any credit for this. I never called myself a healer. And, it's just beautiful to hear that. At the same time, the humility that he was expressing when he was saying that was beautiful as well. And it was a triple entendre. He was talking about the mother, the divine feminine, Mother Earth, and also his mother. All women are the ones who taught him how to become a healer. All. The feminine energy is what taught him how to become a healer. And of course, he also spoke about the Mexican the Mexican healer. It's like a shaman of sorts that taught him how to heal, because he helped heal him of his paralysis, his diabetes, his obesity when he's around the age of 40. And that was the only other person he would give credit to helping him as far as healing. I mean, we talked for about 2 hours or so, and I was able to tell him my story about how I had chronic stomach pain from 2005 to 2013 until I incorporated a vegan diet. And this chronic stomach pain was just every year I would go. You know, I didn't trust Western medicine. I never trusted Western medicine. I come from a family of nurses and doctors, but I still never trusted Western medicine. But I would be obeying and listen to my mother at the time, who would say, just going to the doctor, you know, once a year I would go and see what's going on here, because it would bother me so much. And they would say, oh, you're healthy 18-year-old, oh, next year you're healthy 19-year-old, oh, you're healthy 20-year-old. Same thing they would continue to tell me, because of course Western medicine heals nothing. For the past 500 years, they heal nothing. And I knew this because I was reading not only great books like Drugs Masqueraded as Foods by Dr. Suzar, which was the book that helped me on my journey, along with listening to Dr. Phil Valentine DVDs and watching Dr. Sebi's videos in college. So I knew this, but I still would go because, again, I didn't have the discipline to fully change my diet. And I told them about this. And I said it wasn't until I incorporated the African biomineral balance and then I became vegan. I started to take, you know, blue vervain, sea moss, bladderwrack, yellow dock, burdock, able to cleanse my lymphatic system, boost my the defense mechanisms of my body, empower those defense mechanisms, promote, you know, start to promote healing for my central nervous system by, you know, taking, at the time he had the banju. All of these things helped. But it was really simple. It was simple as just changing my diet. When I told him that, he was just like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm like, thank me, thank you. He's like, thank you. And I was like, wow. Again, another teaching moment. He was thanking me because I listened. He was thanking me because I listened. Because I was able to change myself, change my life by incorporating the African biomineral balance, by becoming disciplined, by changing my diet to be another person to legitimize his work, his healing methodology. Because of course he's not the creator of this. He just rediscovered or reintroduced a simple scientific method. Very simple scientific method. And because I was just another person, one of thousands of people to validate his healing modality, he was thanking me. And of course I thanked him back. I thanked him. I didn't let him get away with that. And, you know, I told him, you know, I want to be able to bring this to Nigeria, because me being first generation Nigerian, I wanted to bring this to Nigeria. I knew I would get resistance, you know, but I had this big vision of how to bring this to Nigeria. And at the time he was doing great work in Africa. He's meeting with heads of states and other people. He was still getting resistance from Africans on the continent and, you know, African governments, but he was also had an open arms. People had open arms accepting this healing methodology. And he was talking about that as well. But just, you know, the beauty, the joy, the compassion, the love that he was able to express. I mean, Dr. Sebi always would say he's not a metaphysician, he's not spiritual, he's not a spiritualist. Even if he says he wasn't all that. He told us that too. He wasn't all that. But the energy that he had, the space that he carried, the state of being that he was in because of the healing sciences, the lifestyle that he lived, the diet that he had, he was radiating a very high frequency energy. He was radiating a very high frequency energy. He was radiating bliss. Although he still had pain and hurt. At that time, he still had pain and hurt. And I can see that he was still going through his own healing process at that time. There was still a sense of joy, innocence, gentleness that he had and he was expressing. And it was something to admire. It was something to admire. And I remember, my wife and I thinking like, okay, what's going to be the next step for him? And he just reassured us, everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. And we know what happened 2 years later. August 6, 2016, he transitioned. This is why I'm making this video, to honor Dr. Sebi, to honor this legend, just to share, the meeting that I had with him, because, many people in my inner circle, family, friends, I've told this story to a degree with them, and, I wanted to share this with the world, who this being was. And at that time, 2 years before he transitioned, what he was going through, he still had so much love, so much joy, so much, what's the word? He had so much hope. Simple. He just had so much hope about the future. And I think his hope did not only come just for him and what he was going to do, but for what people who he taught, like Jordanis and Pablo and, Blue Pill, Red Pill, Mama Pill, all of these people who he encountered, who he was able to touch, who he was able to empower, teach. He knew that he was leaving his teachings in good hands. And that's where I think that hope was coming from. So I would definitely want to make another video about Dr. Sebi, his sciences, his healing methodology, and I hope that this video can be of use for those who are listening. Always remember, ignorance is not bliss. Bliss is enlightenment. So radiate the eternal bliss of 1,000 suns, eternally blissful. Thank you.